Living in Melbourne's St Kilda, Megan Williams makes the most of the city she loves.
So it's very close to work, it's very close to the beach. I love the vibrancy of St Kilda. I love that there's all sorts of walks of life that all reside here. So I find that really appealing.
Megan once dreamed of buying a property here.
In my mid-20s, I decided that I wanted to purchase a property, and I started looking to see what I could afford, and very quickly realised that I wasn't going to be able to afford where I wanted to live.
Now aged 35, Megan is the proud owner of 2 properties, just not in the suburb where she lives.
This is my first investment property in Deer Park. It doesn't really look like much, and to be honest, that's what I first thought when I first purchased it.
Megan bought a rundown house on a large block of land, 34 kilometres west of St Kilda in the Melbourne suburb of Deer Park.
I didn't really have any intention of living there. It's increased in value so much that I was able to acquire that second property in Ballarat, which is fantastic.
How are you? Good to see you. Tell me what's going on.
With the help of negative gearing, Megan's managed to build enough equity in her investment properties to plan her next purchase with her buyer's agent, CATE BAKOS.
So I'm considering buying something that I will actually live in.
So you took the chance to look at something that wasn't aspirational and it wasn't where you wanted to be.
Yeah.
And then you made the decision, a pragmatic decision, to invest in that so that you could nurture your nest egg and then do something when you were ready.
But I knew that I wanted to do something to start setting up my future.
That's right.
730 has identified at least 40 different grants and subsidies for property owners across the nation.
We've got all these supports for people to buy housing. If we alter one, we're probably going to have to alter a lot of them.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
If Megan buys a third property to live in this time, she'll get a discount on her stamp duty if that property costs less than $750,000.
It's a nice strong one.
Victoria's stamp duty concession was designed to help first home buyers.
The next property that I would like to buy, it will be a property that I live in, so it will be owner occupied, and therefore that is the best situation to use that concession.
Tax settings, concessions, exemptions and grants. There's no shortage of inducements for homeowners and property investors in this country. Last year, when property prices were falling, the Labor Party went to a federal election pledging to wind back 2 of the most contentious tax perks for property owners: negative gearing and discounts on capital gains tax.
Had those policies been put to the people perhaps a year before when the market was still screaming ahead, they might have responded differently. But I think they've been well and truly put to bed. It would be a very brave party that tried to put those forward now.
It'll make it hard for political parties of either persuasion to talk tax reform because, as we saw in May, it's very easy to create a scare campaign when people are looking to either withdraw very, very favourable tax treatment on particular investments, or they propose ideas that are going to make housing more affordable. The code word which Labor dare not mention during the election campaign is that means probably lower house prices, but people were alert enough to see that and of course recoiled against it.
I think that was a tough message to send to property owners, and I think that was quite a decisive element in the final election outcome.
So Australians voted against change and have doubled down on their love of property.
Yeah.
Where you want to put that?
This is the 5th house we've had in about 7 years. We ended up in this house because we were evicted from our previous place.
We'd only been there for 18 months.
8 years ago, Andrew Page and his wife Natalie were homeowners.
So I've always worked in the financial markets. We were in a situation where we bought a house. We were quite happy there. I guess we thought that we could make our money work harder elsewhere.
They sold the house and invested the proceeds in the stock market, making more than they would have in the property market. They also invested in Andrew's startup, a platform for investors sharing tips and advice.
It was all very sensible long-term kind of investments in the market, and it was a very considered decision. We spent a lot of time sort of going through numbers and diving deep into spreadsheets.
Lots of spreadsheets.
You know, trying to sort of work out, was it a good move financially? But we didn't factor in that sort of dignity and that security aspect to it, which is hard to put into a spreadsheet.
I can go in the bathroom, that's a bath toy.
It's very hard to get a lease that's longer than 12 months, so you don't really ever have a chance to make a house a home.
Does this place feel like home?
Absolutely
No.
not. I fully expect that we won't be here in 12 months.
Can I help you?
Yes, you can.
They have done well financially, but they've also paid a price.
We just didn't realise how bad it was going to be. It's turned out way worse than I could have imagined. Renters are an underclass of people. You get treated differently.
Definitely.
By agents, and you get treated differently by anyone when you say that you're renting and you don't own your house. There's like a stigma attached to it.
Is it your view that policies in Australia favour home ownership over a life in the rental market?
Yeah, it's definitely my view. I think it's a view that's pretty well supported by the facts as well.
Absolutely no doubt at all that the tax system encourages and favours very strongly homeowners and discriminates against renters. For owner-occupiers, any gains they have in their property are tax-free. So this incredible lift in house prices, the OK Boomer set who bought their houses 30, 40, 50 years ago and have had multiple increases in the value of their property, it's all tax-free.
In supporting people investing in housing, we're ignoring this growing trend for people to not invest in housing and to need rental accommodation, and the tax system is biased against that.
I think looking forward, what we're going to see with this long, low rate environment is that house prices and asset prices more generally will rise. And so that means that people who have wealth, who have a house, will have increased wealth, and people who don't will be locked out of that wealth. So it is definitely something that when we look ahead, something that really does need to be addressed by changing policy settings so that we don't have a situation of haves and have-nots.
The advantages of property ownership are most striking in retirement. Exclusive Australian Bureau of Statistics data proves the staggering difference in wealth between older renters and owner-occupied households. The ABS found these households that own the property outright had a median net worth of $960,000. Even those households with a mortgage had a median net worth of about $935,000. In stark contrast, the median net worth of similar households that rent was just over $40,000.
I think if nothing changes, it means that people with high housing wealth will have increased housing wealth, and it will mean that those people who are not in the housing market will find it more difficult over time. And I think we will see a situation where wealth inequality, and particularly intergenerational inequality, rises.
We have a real fixation on property. It's seen as something that's beyond just a place to live and shelter. It's really seen as part of a bigger dream and also a pathway to wealth creation.
Housing wealth is treated very differently to other assets once you're retired. Our primary places of residence are exempt from the age pension means test, no matter what the place is worth.
Policy settings in Australia exacerbate the divide between the housing haves and the have-nots. The fact that you can own a $2 million house and still get the pension is probably unfair in a world when there are so many Australians who don't own their own homes and an increasing number that won't own their own homes in retirement.
In Australia today, you could live in a $4 million or even a $40 million home and still get the pension.
As I understand it, that is indeed the case.
Do you think you should be eligible for the age pension? I mean, you're not, because obviously you have other wealth. But if you owned this house and had a few $100,000 in savings, you could get the age pension.
Yes,
is that fair?
I would not. Well, put it this way, I would certainly not be applying for the age pension. Well, this is going to be one of the big issues coming forward, isn't it? It's going to be a huge issue, and who's going to have the confidence to really stand up and challenge it?
A review of Australia's retirement income system is currently underway, but including the family home in the pension assets test has already been ruled out.
Even with their tremendous reluctance to touch this issue, they should be re-examining it every 5 years or so to assess whether the circumstances now are ripe for making a change. A government should be asking that question. Are we now at the stage in public policy delivery where we should consider this question of how reasonable it is to have people who have a very, very valuable asset not have that taken into account in providing the support that we otherwise provide to people in their old age?
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.